On today's Child Seat Review segment, we're out here taking a look at the 2017 Audi Q7. This is Audi's largest crossover. As usual, this is a Graco Classic Ride 50 child seat, suitable for forward or rearward-facing installation, and children between 4 and 50 pounds. Now the Q7 is, again, Audi's largest crossover. It is a 3-row crossover, and this competes with everything from an Acura MDX Infiniti QX60 on up to something like a Mercedes-Benz GLS, which is the new name for the Mercedes GL. As usual, let's start things out up front by moving this front passenger seat to a comfortable position where I have about an inch of clearance between my knees and the dashboard. You want to do that to maximize the amount of rear seat room, especially if you're going to put a rearward-facing child seat in your Audi. At nearly 200 inches long, the Q7 is one of the larger entries in this segment, and as a result, we do have a decent amount of room here in the second row. This child seat is installed at the proper angle for a rearward-facing child seat in the Q7, and I have an adequate amount of clearance between the front seat and the child seat. You should know that if you opt for the optional rear seat entertainment system, that will reduce the clearance a little bit, but it does look like it's detachable in the Q7 versus a fixed system like we find in some other vehicles out there. That does make it a little bit more practical for child seat use. Helping improve practicality when it comes to child seats, the Q7 has a 40-20-40 middle seat. And that means that this center section moves independently of the outboard seats. It is also quite wide. It's actually wide enough to have a child seat right here in the center position and not interfere with the front seats. That means it's actually possible to put 2 tall people up front, 1 child seat in the back in a rearward-facing configuration, and actually have it near the front of its travel. You can also slide this back if you need even more clearance between you and the rear seats. In yet another interesting twist, the Q7 has 5 sets of latch anchors. We actually have latch anchors in all 3 seating positions in the middle row and both seating positions in the third row, and that is fairly unique. That's all down to the width of the Q7, and that means that you can just barely flip and fold these outboard seats while you actually have a child seat latched into place right here in the middle. That's something that you can't do in a wide variety of 3-row crossovers, not even mass market crossovers with a family focus. If you prefer to use a shoulder belt, a nice touch is that the shoulder belt actually comes out of the seat itself. It doesn't come out of the ceiling. That means that your child seat or booster seat is not going to be skewed from one side to the other. As I said, back here in the third row, we do have 2 sets of latch anchors, but we don't really have enough room in the third row to put a child seat in this rearward-facing position. Remember that in general terms, the safest place for your child is in the second row of a 3-row crossover because there's simply more room for crumple zones all the way around the child. When it comes to the forward-facing installation here in the third row, you can see that these rear seats are fairly wide, and as an adult, I can actually comfortably sit next to this child seat right over here on my left. In general terms, the third row in the Q7 is quite conducive to child seats because this third row seat back is fairly upright and the seat bottom cushion is also fairly horizontal. That means that you don't really have to do much in order to fit your average child seat back here. Now the seat bottom cushion is a little bit short and you will definitely notice that with some of the larger child seats. Now getting into and out of the third row is a little bit trickier in the Q7 than it is in something like an Infiniti QX60 if you do have child seats in the vehicle, because the QX60 allows you to keep certain latch-anchored child seats in the forward-facing position in the seat on just one side of the vehicle and still articulate it forward so you can get into the back of the third row. You really can't do that in the Q7 if any child seats are attached to the outboard seats because the center section just folds flat like that, and these outboard seats, it's a 2-stage maneuver in order to actually get in the back. You fold it completely forward and then you flip them forward like that. Obviously you can't keep a child seat on there and do that. However, because the Q7 is so wide, you can actually put 1 child seat in the center, 1 child seat on either of the outboard seating positions because they're essentially the same dimension, and you'll still be able to get into the back seat as long as you don't get one of those really wide child seats. Another nice touch in the Q7 is that we do have a power folding third row, and the third row can actually be adjusted from either of these rear door openings. So you just open the door right back here, there's some buttons, you use those to either fold or raise up those rear seats. Then there's a third set of controls in the back. Although the Q7 is a little bit larger than the XC90 in terms of overall dimensions, its packaging is a little bit less efficient. So we actually get a little bit less cargo room behind the third row. It's about 1 cubic foot less. However, you can still just barely fit a 24-inch roller bag and a 26-inch roller bag, just not quite as easily as you can in the Volvo. However, this is still notably larger than you'll find in most other crossovers out there. With those 2 roller bags removed from the Q7, you'll see those buttons right back here for flipping and folding the third row. I suspect a lot of people will keep that third row folded most of the time. You'll also find another button back here for the air suspension. This allows you to raise or lower the back of the Q7 to make it easier to load or unload cargo. Because of the size of the cargo area in the Q7, behind the third row, I was only able to put one child seat back there. However, if you fold the third row, you can put a large amount of luggage in the Q7 because this is quite a large crossover. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2017 Audi Q7. There will also be a full review on the Q7 coming up very shortly, so be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen, and I'll see you next week.